Mr. Prime Minister, for welcoming us, not just as a Prime Minister, but in the heart of your heart, if I may say. And you mentioned Napoleon, and you mentioned as well this États généraux. And in France, we know that when we launch États généraux, it could be a good signal, but even if you never know how it will finish. But at the end of the day, we need them today. I think I will go straight to the point because you started your work with President von der Leyen and had a lot of exchange with our commissioners, and Chancellor of Austria and Prime Minister already expressed themselves. We know pretty much the situation in Europe, and both Draghi report and Letta report, I think, framed our common thought just after pandemic, and the necessity clearly to work very hard on our competitiveness. But I would say on top of that, we had a big acceleration of history. And we started to deliver on the basis of the Draghi report and the Letta report. Sometimes it's too slow, as a few people say, but it's clearly the Commission, and probably President von der Leyen explained to you this morning that she started to launch a series of omnibus initiative with the Vice President and the Commissioner, but we need the Parliament, and it's still too slow if you refer to Draghi and Letta report. But on top of that, we had an acceleration of at least three factors. One, which was already on track for Draghi report, energy cost. You mentioned it. And in fact, cheap Russian energy stopped in 2022, and there is no way back. And this is the first point to be taken into consideration. And we didn't properly fix this issue till now. Second, we thought that China would remain a supermarket for us and for our exports. And this situation is over. 2025 is the first year during which Germany, which was the main exporter of Eurozone and the European economy, had a trade deficit with China. It never happened before. And it's clear that during the past 2 years, we were overwhelmed by the Chinese exports towards the European market. And this is a total reverse of our history. And the third point is that the United States, our ally, is also increasingly confrontational. And post-Draghi report, what happened? Tariffs. But not just tariff, a series of economic coercion mechanisms on pharma, on a lot of other topics, on Greenland, on the Board of Peace, a lot of threats, sector by sector. End of Russia as a permanent provider of low-cost energy. End of China as a main export market to make them our main competitor, and especially for car makers, especially for key sectors of our competitiveness. And third, having the US now putting tariff on our economy and coercion mechanism, this is a game changer. And this is why it's not just a transition. And none of this new factor will change on the short run. This is not a temporary shock. This is clearly a structural turning point. And we have several options. The first one is to wait, or to remain quite slow, to make incremental change, and to do what we've done during the past decades. The consequence of this option would be slow decline. The second one is to try to compromise with those who are trying to kill our economy, what I call the happy vassalization. I'm not even sure it will be happy. Another one is a wake-up, but with a clear acceleration, and we need a new scale and new speed in our approach in order to stop with the fragmentation, weakening, and probably the humiliation of Europe. And this way forward, which is according to me the only one we could defend and advocate, is to make Europe an independent power. not just being a single market, but an economic power, meaning protecting our producer, defending our producer, and deciding to protect as well our own markets, and building our strategic independence. If Europe wants to remain an industrial power, we must preserve your key sectors, obviously chemistry, which is the industry of the industry, but all the sectors you gathered in this room, in this booth. And because if we lose our capacity to produce critical molecules, these key elements of our economy, we will totally lose our capacity to have our own defense capabilities, our pharmaceutical supply, our agriculture, or to deliver our own green transition. This is why I really consider that your Antwerp Declaration in 2024 marked a turning point, but this is why I really believe we have to deliver a new agenda. And for me, this agenda is based on 4 pillars. The 2 first ones, I would say, are largely shared. Simplification and deepening of the single market, the first one. And clearly, this is all about implementation and speed. The second one is diversification of our trade partnerships and de-risking, remaining necessary. The third one is protection and European preference. And the fourth one is massive investment and innovation. And we need 4 of them if we want to be credible and deliver an holistic approach for our European industry. First, simplification. What we need is a stronger single market. And thinking at scale, I would say. The single market at 450 million consumers must become Europe's primary instrument of power, resilience, and competitiveness. This requires a change of mindset from fragmentation to scale, from national reflexes to European ambition. So we have an agenda in order to deliver this improvement of the single market, and I don't want to be too detailed, but I just want to flag one or 2 sectors. And obviously the first one is energy. When we built a single market, we decided not to make a single market on energy, telco, and finance. I mean, for relevant reasons at the time. It was 40 years ago. But on energy, clearly today, this is a weakness. Energy is the backbone of European industry, and you mentioned the impact of the post-2022 situation. And let's be honest, Europe cannot defend ambitious climate objectives while allowing its industrial base to disappear. High energy prices, combined with carbon costs, are accelerating deindustrialization and not decarbonization. So we must therefore act on several fronts. First, energy prices. We must deliver a genuine energy union, capable of providing stable, predictable, and competitive energy to industry. This means massive investment in energy grids and interconnections, long-term contracts, and I would say, in fact, what we have to build, it's very simple. We have to build an integrated European grid to provide the free circulation of low-carbon electrons. What we have to offer to the industrials is to have long-term contracts with full visibility with the pricing for low-carbon electron. And sometimes it will be low-carbon electron provided by offshore wind close to here, solar energy in Spain, or nuclear energy in France, depending on the moment of the year and your needs. What we have to fix is the fragmentation of our market by building this infrastructure and a single regulation and integration of our national grids and regulation. It also means recognizing that different member states have different energy mixes. And the other points, and we started to fix it, but we lost a lot of time with that, we need technological neutrality. Until last year, we were incapable to have technological neutrality. And as long as we differentiated renewable, nuclear, and so on, it was a stupidity. Because what we need is to provide on our soil low-carbon pilotable energy. So tech neutrality, integration of our grids, and clearly integration of a common energy market. In this regard, France has clear advantage due to our model and the existing model with the nuclear energy and so on. But we need the interconnections, and we want to step up at the European scale. This is a very important answer. This is a structural one. But let's be honest, we have to accelerate and do our best. But it will not fix your situation in 6 months' time. The second approach is with CBAM. The carbon border adjustment mechanism is a necessary tool, but only if it works in practice. And when we enforce it, it's a super important instrument. Because it's clearly what we advocated, it's a mirror clause. I was yesterday with ArcelorMittal facility in Dunkirk. CBAM is the only way to prevent circumvention and not to create new vulnerabilities. And because we have CBAM for steel, they decided to invest in Europe. Without CBAM, it's over. No chance to preserve our steel industry without implementing CBAM. This requires robust default values, rapid identification of high-risk country product pairs, and a swift extension to relevant downstream products, particularly in chemical value chains. So decarbonization must become a driver of competitiveness, not a vector of industrial decline, and it's extremely important. And beyond CBAM, what we need, and it's the same if we take REACH as a regulation for the chemical industry, mirror clause. As long as we put additional regulation to our industries, we have to be sure that we reflect them and mirror them to the non-European industries. Otherwise, we have to kill our regulation to our own players because it's just meaning that our over-regulation, our decarbonization strategy is the killer for our industry. I want to insist on one point in this regard, predictability. And this is absolutely key for our industrial partners. You need stable and predictable regulation. Shall we look at the emissions trading system mechanism? It must support decarbonization in the long run, but without undermining competitiveness, with predictability. Carbon leakage must be avoided at all costs. And for energy-intensive industries such as chemistry, uncertainty is as damaging as high prices. So providing visibility and predictability is key. On simplification, I said it many times, now Europe must deliver quickly and credibly. We have 10 omnibus packages. They have to be clearly implemented in the current year. And the stock of EU legislation must be reviewed to eliminate inconsistencies, redundancies, and unnecessary burdens. Simplification to provide clarity, predictability, and speed. This is a key point. I could revert, but we'll have Q&A on the 28th regime on what we have to do in the different sectors, but it's the first pillar. The second pillar is trade diversification and de-risking. Europe must continue to pursue balanced and mutual beneficial trade partnerships, but trade policy must now become a strategic tool to reduce dependencies and vulnerabilities. This is particularly true for critical raw materials and strategic inputs. Despite dozens of trade and mineral agreements, Europe remains dangerously exposed. So we must move from agreements on paper to concrete projects on the ground. This means supporting extraction, processing, and refining capacity, investing in recycling and traceability, and building strategic reserves, including a European stockpile of critical materials. But in this diversification and de-risking, rare earths and critical minerals are absolutely one of the key issues where we have to diversify our partnership, where we have to increase as well our circular solution, but build a European capacity and try to negotiate. And the G7 we will share this year will be a good framework to try to cooperate with other economies. I think about Canada particularly, but clearly we have to de-risk our economy on that. The third pillar is about investment and innovation. And I want to insist on that because in the short run it's absolutely necessary to accelerate in terms of investment on strategic technologies. On artificial intelligence, quantum computing, robotics, space, defense, clean tech, biotech, chemistry. chips, etc., etc. We are at the beginning of a big revolution where both China and the US, privately and publicly, are investing much more than we are doing. We are lagging behind, let's be honest, when you look at the figures. It was very clear in Draghi reports. And on top of that, you could clearly add defense and security as a series of key sectors where there is a big acceleration of investment. Europe must be a technological maker and not just a regulator, which will require both private and public investment. This is why the next EU budget from 2028 to 2034 must significantly strengthen Europe's financial firepower. It will be our discussion this year. But this is why we have to activate much more private money. In terms of saving, we are number one in the world. Europe's savings amount to nearly 30 trillion euros. But this is overinvested in the bond market, underinvested on equity and innovation. And every year, around 300 billion flow from Europe to finance the American economy are leaving our continent. So what we have to do in order to do so? First, we have to deliver the securitization program proposed by the Commission. We need a big acceleration. This is the only way to take the money from the balance sheet of banks and insurance, which I want here just to remind you, it's 75% of the financing of our economy. We have to take with the securitization program a big amount of money to rechannel it to the financing of equity and innovation. Second, acceleration of the capital market union. It's a game changer. And we have to accelerate this year, and for me 26 is the year where we have to finalize all the text. If we do the same as what we did with the banking union, we have no chance to be credible. It took us 10 years not even to finish the job. 26, we have to finalize the job, and at the middle of this year, if we don't progress, we should consider to do it with a few member states, and clearly to have enhanced cooperation if we are unable to deliver at 27. But on top of that, we have to invest much more public money. Our budget, obviously, but this is why I propose to make Eurobond for the future. Why? Because nobody wants to put more money from the national scale to increase the European budget. There is no room to increase the European budget with additional taxes. And if I say we will increase the ETS 1 or ETS 2, I don't think I will be consistent with my former points. So it's not a good room to maneuver. We have no space. So the only way to increase the common budget is to make common issuance on the market. And guess what? We are under-leveraged at the aggregated level. Kristalina Georgieva came and pitched in front of the European Commission. If you look, both China and the US, they have much more leverage than the Europeans. We have to fix our own national situation in terms of public finance, because it's how to deal with our social model. This is a national issue. But at the European level, we have to invest for our future and for our industry. If we want to have the right level of investment on space, defense and security, clean tech, AI and quantum, and to transform the productivity and competitiveness, the only way is to have common issuance of debt. Because we are under-leveraged and because there is a clear demand on the market for new paper. All the big pockets of this world want to diversify their portfolio from the dollar. And they are looking for safe and liquid assets. And a common euro debt is a very good, a very safe, but not a sufficiently liquid asset today. So we have to remember progressively the several issues we made in the past few years. ESM, safe programs, what we did during the COVID time with the first emission. So we need a European treasury to have just one common basket for this emission and more depth and more consistency. But we have clearly the ability to issue common debt to finance this common investment. It's not financing the past mistakes, but it's financing our future. Why? Because if we are not able to be in the race with the US and China in the coming 5 years, we have no chance to deliver our agenda. My last point is about protection and European preference. And I know that when a French guy says protection, some people want to hear protectionism. No. I mean, it's not my political DNA. I don't believe in protectionism. But I don't believe in such a naive continent where we are the only one in this world not to protect the local producers. Go to China. No chance one of you has even the equal opportunities with a Chinese player. Go to the US. On the North American market, no chance that none of you has the same chance as a local producer. They have local preference. They have local content being secured in a lot of sectors. Sometimes they even impose you to have a local partner in your JVs. Look at Europe. So many times we invest and finance non-European solutions. We are crazy. Literally. So we started to react, and this is why when the Commission started these inquiries on Europe and on EVs, it was normal. It was just restoring level playing field. It was not a protectionist approach. It was just to say, it's clear that some of these EV producers are over-subsidized. It was not a tariff across the board, but just to say, we will restore level playing field. It worked. Look at the figures. It decreased right after because it was unfair. But it's not sufficient. We started to do some protections with this, clearly, this first action of the commissions, with these inquiries on EVs, with the safeguard clause on steel, with the recent guidelines on the automotive sector. But we have a big issue today. We are too slow. A lot of you probably ask for inquiries in order to trigger safeguard measures. But it takes sometimes 18 months to 24 months to the Commission. I mean, it's sufficient for your challenger to kill you. I mean, you know that on a daily basis. When you have a Chinese challenger based on other subsidies, making price at 20–30% under your price, if 2 years later the Commission says, you were right, but you are dead, I mean, thank you, God. I'm happy I was right. It's over. So we have to accelerate and need much more swiftly process for these inquiries, clearly. But I think we have to go further. We need this European preference. We have to secure on strategic sectors a minimum percentage of European content in order to protect a systemic value chain-based approach. This is the only way not to be reactive. I was yesterday in Dunkirk with Arcelor, I mentioned it. We saved them with safeguard laws. We took a lot of measures. Thanks to the French nuclear energy, we did what I hope we will do at the European scale in a few years' time, long-term contracts with low cost for energy-intensive business. But look at the situation. If the automotive sectors decide to buy Chinese steel, it's over in 3 to 5 years' time for these guys. And the same guys we saved vis-à-vis China when they were competitors, they want to build their competitiveness with their suppliers. And they go to the Chinese for their suppliers in order to reduce the costs. This is what we are doing by the lack of solidarity sometimes in some value chains in Europe. So let's be honest, if you want to preserve jobs in this continent, if you want to preserve our social models, if you want to speak about semiconductors, chemical industry, etc., we have to preserve and define, by design, European content. And to say in some critical sectors, we need a minimum percentage of European content. This is extremely important. And let's be honest, on the short run, for some of your sectors, this is the most efficient approach. If we don't have sufficiently credible measures on the short run, everything I mentioned before, it will take time. Let's imagine we will deliver the capital market union this year. Before the money will come to your pocket, it will take a few years. Let's imagine we will deliver the simplification. It will take time. We have to urge and accelerate on all these issues. But protection is just the only way to preserve the industrial footprint we have today. I want us to deliver the next generation with the investment package. But we are clearly in emergency mode. This is why we need that. And if we are not sufficiently and collectively efficient, perhaps for some sectors, we will have to take some tariffs across the board measures in order to deliver this agenda. But look at your sector. Because of energy costs and over subsidies in China, 10%, but this is just the beginning. And look at the different sectors under such a pressure. So sorry, I was too long, but I spoke with passion. But I decided to come here first because I love the Prime Minister of this country and I know he loves this city, so I took this commitment. But second, because I clearly share this feeling of emergency. We cannot wait. We have to accelerate our decisions, and tomorrow will be key in our retreat. But we have to take very short-term measures, and sometimes some of these measures were not part of our DNA. But we are living totally different new times. So we have to accept to deliver some critical measures, not very familiar with the classical European toolkit, because we are living different times. Emergency mode. So let's move and let's act. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much.